Good evening, everyone, and thank you all very much for coming this evening. It's great for us to have the opportunity to tell you a bit more about the programs that we offer at the law school. So what I'm intending to cover is just to give you the barest of outlines in some respects in terms of the different LLB programs, how you can get entry to these programs, and then some of the characteristics of what it is to be a Macquarie law student. So in terms of the different programs, we have a combined LLB program. So this is for students who have just completed their high school studies, perhaps had the gap year, and combine their LLB degree with another degree program. And there's about 11 different degrees that we partner with. I should mention in relation to the combined programs that from next year we're going to be introducing 2 new majors that are also law related as well. So the Bachelor of Arts will also have a major in criminology on the one hand, and also there will be an option of a major in law, public policy and governance, and we think that that will be a very nice pairing for students who are interested in the LLB. Now, in addition to the combined programs, we also offer a graduate LLB, and this is for students who have already completed another degree and are looking to study just law. So the combined program is a 5-year program where you usually do the first 3 years is both law units as well as units from your partner degree. Usually students complete that degree after 3 years and they spend their last 2 years just doing the law units. With the graduate LLB program, that is a 3-year full-time study of law, so you can complete the whole degree in 3 years, potentially less than that if you take up some of the summer session units as well. The third variation we have for the LLB is also by distance. Now, for entry into this particular program, you don't have to have completed a prior degree, but there is a maturity requirement in terms of accepting people who are 21 and over. Now, this program is offered by distance, which means that the majority of your learning is online, but we have 2-day compulsory on-campus sessions for each of the units. So this is really for people who are working full-time and then they study part-time. That's where it is aimed at. For the graduate LLB program, from next year we will be offering that on a distance basis as well. So the majority of the learning online with just these 2-day on-campus sessions. We do not recommend that you attempt full-time study with full-time work though, so please take that into consideration. At the end of the day though, everybody is learning the same material. They're just going through in a different program in that respect, so there is no difference beyond some of the delivery modes in that regard. Now, in terms of getting into these different programs, the entry is via UAC. Into the combined program from high school, the ATAR, depending on which combined program, varies between 95 and 96. And those are our real cut-offs. So some law schools might advertise a higher cut-off and then do forced entries, which means they'll take people who are slightly below that. We actually advertise what we do. So those are our cut-offs that we have. Now, if you don't have that particular ATAR, however, please don't give up hope. What you can instead do is if you start another degree program at Macquarie, so you could come in and start your Bachelor of Commerce, for example, after your first year we have an internal transfer program which is open to Macquarie students. If they've attained a GPA of 3 in their first year of university study, then they can apply to transfer into the LLB program, and we do that as an internal process. And we take up to 50 students for start of year and mid-year entry for that. So this is actually quite useful if perhaps you have not done so well in high school, but then you start university and you really come into your own. So in that instance, we're only looking at your university results for the internal transfer. If you were very close to the cutoff, you didn't quite get there, another option is to apply again through UAC, and that takes into account your first year results as well, and that might be enough to get you over the line. We sometimes have students who start at other law schools and then transfer into Macquarie after the first year, and you can get credit for previous studies for subjects that were studied as part of an accredited LLB program. So there are different pathways in, and certainly bear in mind that in the end, even if you don't start off in law, it still is an option through the graduate LLB program, or potentially, doing it by distance later on. So there are a lot of different ways to get into these different programs. Now, in terms of why would you choose Macquarie, I think there are particular characteristics of our program that do make us a bit different in our focus and in the type of students we attract and equally graduate. Interdisciplinarity has been a hallmark of the Macquarie Law School education since it started. So what interdisciplinarity means in the end is that we're not just teaching you the law, we're not just teaching you the rules. So, for example, I taught a Law of the Sea class this afternoon, and I could tell my students what was in the relevant treaty, but it was more relevant once I started pulling in all the politics that went into the negotiations around that particular treaty. So it's about looking more broadly, looking to the other disciplines that are relevant in how we understand law. And that's kind of consistent with what our staff do in their research. At the end of the day, they're not just doing research about law, but they're always looking outside of the law as well and bringing that in, so we have a really deep understanding of why things operate the way they do. So there are some examples there of just some of the different research projects of my colleagues, and for each of them it's all about how that then translates into what they do in the classroom, and the students can then benefit from, you know, the work that we're doing as part of our research. So it is about broadening your experience and understanding why things happen the way they do. Now, another distinct feature for Macquarie Law School is our subscription to what's referred to as PACE, or Participation and Community Engagement. This is a university-wide initiative that was put in place as part of a curriculum renewal program, and the law school has fully endorsed this, and now it is compulsory for every student who is starting our law degree to undertake a PACE unit. What that means, in its most traditional perspective, it's about doing internships. That's kind of your traditional PACE thing. It's based on an idea of what's called work-integrated learning. It's the idea that you have an opportunity to see what is happening in the real world or what is happening in a workplace and then putting it in an academic context. So our students who do internships as one example, or various placements, on the one hand they're doing their work, but by putting it in the academic framework they're also having an opportunity to think about why it is they're going about what they're doing, what are the professional responsibilities that are involved, you know, what does it mean to be part of a team, what are your responsibilities in relation to your employer, in relation to your colleagues. So just having a chance to reflect on what it is to be working. So our students complete that unit at the end of their law degree, and Liesl Pierce will be talking more about her experiences on that. And it's the idea that it will mean our graduates are just a bit more workplace ready because they'll have had that experience. Now, while the internship and placements is kind of the traditional way to go about doing this, we've also developed a new unit called Law Governance and Professional Leadership. And so instead of all of our students going out, this is when we bring the community into the university instead. So we bring in external stakeholders who have an interest in a particular issue area, and our students work on law reform related projects or on advocacy related projects that will have a direct benefit for that external partner. There's a strong emphasis of mutual benefit in the PACE program, that it's got to be the external partner who gets something out of it as well as the student getting something out of it. So through that particular unit, we can ensure that all students get this exposure. Now, another strong emphasis in our program is on this international dimension, and Macquarie Law School has included international law as one of our compulsory units. The reality is for law practice these days that there is nearly always an international element. I mean, even if you're a family lawyer, you still have to know about the Hague Convention on Abductions. There's so often an international element to what is going on. Of course, there's some situations where you're doing local government law. Perhaps it's not so relevant. But the moment I say that, I think we'll know there are conventions on heritage law, so it is actually still relevant. So we're kind of taking that perspective and bringing that into our law degree. And there are a large number of international law electives for students to choose from as well. And about a third of our students end up on going on international exchanges during their studies, so they can go and complete some of their electives at a university overseas. And the university has a whole network of partners set up for this purpose, and they can give students some funding towards travel overseas as well. And also within the PACE framework, there's PACE International, so some of our students have gone over to Borneo and to Cambodia to do internships overseas as well. And also our students are competing in various negotiations and advocacy and mooting competitions that are overseas as well. So we've had students who have won at the national level and then gone on to the international level for their competitions. So there's lots of different ways that it feeds into what we do. So what else is it about Macquarie? I have to admit that in some respects I find this evening a little difficult because it is putting this very, very strong focus on, well, how is Macquarie different from the other places, when the reality of my life is I don't worry about that, because we are just focused on making sure that we have a really good law program and that we are improving the quality of our students' experience. I mean, we know what the other law schools are doing, but we're not really competing. We just figure we offer something different. So in terms of Macquarie, I just feel like if you want to get out of the cookie cutter, then this is probably the place for you. So, you know, we're just trying to ensure that our students, you know, they're learning the core principles they need to be legal professionals, but it's going one step beyond that. So you've got skills that can be used in any field you go on to. Not every Macquarie Law graduate becomes a legal practitioner, and that's a fact I'm quite proud of. I'm glad that so many of them do, and they are obviously doing extraordinarily well in the profession. But they go on lots of different paths, and I think that's very exciting, and I like to think that they can do that because of what we're teaching them and how we're teaching it. And we're constantly looking at different ways to do our program, and certainly when you hear from some of our first year students, you'll hear about some of the changes that George Thomasy has been putting in place in our curriculum to really improve the first year experience, and then to make sure that what our students learn makes sense throughout the trajectory of their degree as well. So there are possibly a number of questions around that, but I'm going to keep my part brief because we've got a lot of people you need to hear from tonight, but I'm certainly happy to go back on any of the points that I've mentioned in the question and answer time. So thanks again for coming along this evening.